All right, so we are going to start with the nail from Strider Knives. This one we're going to cord wrap. Normally, we do it slightly differently. We're going to play with a couple of versions here. So normally this piece of paracord, which is about 4 feet long, I would leave the internal strands in, but I want this to be a little bit thinner, so I've pulled the internal out. So the internal cord has been pulled from this piece, and then I've got another smaller piece that's about 2 feet. Same thing. So I have pulled the interior out of these, melted the one. We're about to melt the other so you can see. You want to melt it a little bit. Squish it down. Make sure your ends are all sealed up. Same thing. This one's done, but we'll make sure it's good. Getting rid of all your little loose threads, making sure everything is going to stay together as we thread this. All right, so we're going to set the short one down for now. Let's set the lighter down for now. And one thing I'm trying on this round of doing this, normally you would be working one side and either be blind when you're working the bottom half, or you'd have to remove what you're working on, flip it out, whatever. So this is just the sheath, the 99-cent spring clip, and a $3 door hinge. So for about $4 and a bench vise, you can make yourself a little jig that as you work, you can just flip this back and forth. Anyway, picked up on that watching a knife maker do a build. Thought it was pretty cool. Stealing the idea. So, take your paracord, double it up, find the middle, poke it through your, not really your bottom hole, but I guess second to bottom hole here. We're going to go up to our top hole, feed that through, and make sure you kind of flatten everything out. That's going to get a little twisted, so we're just going to flatten that. And then what I'm going to do is feed that through to the bottom, because you don't want too much tension while you're trying to pull this. You'll just be fighting against yourself. So we'll feed these two through here. We're going to take that extra slack. I'm definitely not centered anymore, but all right, we're going to pull that slack up all the way to the end. Make sure we're nice and tight. All right, so that's going to lock this piece of paracord in here. We're going to set that off to the side. We're going to take our shorter piece. What you're going to want to do, now I'm probably going to do it on this side just because we've already got a bit of doubled up space. Actually, let me flatten that a little better. So I don't know if you saw that. These were crossed over, so I've just uncrossed it, pulled it tight. What we're going to do is put those out of the way. We're going to take our piece of paracord. We're going to lay it on the back along this piece here. We're going to take our paracord and kind of fold it over here. And then we're going to go under, flip back over, and we're going above this little hitch knot here. Might have to come up a little higher. And if you can see that, I'm just locking it over this piece here. Oh, clearly was not holding that tight. So again, hold the piece here on the back side, wrap around, go over that top knot. You could hold this here as well. Run it along the side of this. rotate it around, come over the top of this knot, and lock it into place. And then we're just gonna don't love the way that's sat, so we're gonna do this one more time. Again, this is why I like doing it on the back side, so we're not sitting on top of that knot, because we're essentially creating a secondary knot here by having a doubled up layer. So I'm just gonna hold that piece like before, come around, lock it in over that knot. Gonna hold it tight this time, wrap back around, and then we're literally just gonna come around, hold it tight, pull over again, and we're just gonna work this all the way down, just making sure we're tight all the way. I'm just making sure everything is nice and secure. It doesn't have to be perfect because this is going to get locked in with this piece of paracord, but I want everything flat and tight, because if it's not, you're setting yourself up for failure going into this next portion. So we're going to come back around. As you see, we're coming up on these two bottom holes. I want to be able to access that for tying this off. So we're going to come back around. We're going to take a little bit of slack back out here. We're going to feed this under itself. Pull that back through. Let's make sure everything stayed flat on us. So that shifted just a little. I'm gonna fix it. Let's pull that back flat. Let's hold that in place. What I'm doing is holding in place here as I tighten, so it locks in there. And then as we flip it over, since it's locked in, we're gonna cut it and then burn it and adhere it to itself. So we'll cut that off pretty close to flush. Melt it and stick it to itself. All right, so that's now locked in there. Now we'll come back over. Make sure everything's flat like we want it to be. And then we will start on this next section. All right, so this is going to be the Strider wrap. So we're going to try and keep it flush here. We're going to pull tight, come back over, and we're going to start on this side and work our way down. So let me pause here. Let me readjust these lights so you can see better. Doing this again. So make sure you're keeping everything as flat as possible as you start this process. So when you come around, make sure you're flat here and flat here. Let me get that out of your way. Then as you're laying flat, then roll those back over each other. One's going to go above here. The other one's going to go below here. And then we're going to rotate. And we're going to do the same thing again. And this one's going to be a little tall because it's on top of an existing knot. but I think it'll look better. So again, make sure you're flat, and you're flat coming into this. Something like that. And like that. And make sure you're in the center. We're going to rotate. Peel around. Sorry, my third light died, y'all, so we're just making it work. So if there's a little bit of shadow, I apologize. I really didn't want to wait to film this. So make sure you're centered. Everything is pushed up as high as possible. Maybe center that back just a little bit more. Pull it tight. So this thing is shifting into my vise. So let me just give myself some room here. Can't get my fat fingers in there. All right. So I can live with that little bit of spacing. We're going to flip it back over. Same thing. Make sure we're flat. Rotate back over. And pull. Let's see here. A little bit of a gap there. Let's fill that. Fill that. I guess you could have done orange underneath, and that would hide some of your gaps. So if you prefer that look, do that. If not, you got to get this really tight to get rid of those gaps. And again, you're going to feed over. Make sure you're flat, which I am not. There you go. So as we are working this, it's slowly filling in some of those voids. Definitely why you want to not gut the paracord. Again, this was just an attempt to try and keep this as slim as possible. Again, make sure you're flat. Rotate over yourself. Lock it in. Make sure everything's pushed up tight. And rotate one more time. And rotate, rotate. Want to make sure we're flat, make sure we're flat, and push it up. Got my knot spacing slightly off here, but by gutting the paracord, it left us a little gap here and there where some black is shining through. All right, rotate it again. Same thing, keep it tight, flat, fold over, and lock it in. Why is this side going so much better than the other one? Notice how much straighter that is than the reverse side. We might be doing this for a fourth time. Yeah, it doesn't always go as planned, especially when you're filming this stuff. So fold, fold, probably doesn't have to be that OCD of worrying about spacing and these holes lining up. It's as long as you're getting it tight, your knots are spaced accordingly, you're going to have a good handle. It may not be the prettiest, but it'll be functional. All right, so again, pull it tight. We rotate it over. Let's make sure everything is flat. Fold into ourselves. Rotate over again. And slowly lining up. Actually, I think that's more centered than I realize. Yep. Just looks funky the way I'm looking at this vise. It kind of, I guess it's following the curve of this handle just a little bit. So we could probably pull that back some, straighten it out. All right. Rotate her over again. So we're getting close to the end here. So we need to be cognizant of our spacing. I think we get one more in there. Oh. Make sure we didn't lose our tension on that last one. Oh, yep. All right. I had let the tension go way too much on that one. You got to be kind of careful, especially as you get to the end. You don't want to start getting a bunch of slack, because this being tight is what's going to lock everything else in. So make sure you're constantly checking to make sure everything's butted up against itself. You're rolling everything over flat, locking it in place. Yeah, let's get one more in there. All right, so at this point, we're getting close to our bottom. You could try and get one more in and then run your knots. Yeah, let's try it. If we need to, we'll back out and pull that last one, but definitely will look better if it's run as far to the bottom as possible. All right. Yeah, I think we're still gonna have plenty of room there. All right, so let's double check. We're pretty straight on our knots. It's not perfectly flat, but I think the biggest point that stands out is this one here, which is where that original knot is. There's probably better ways around that. I will have to play with this, and if I find a better way, I will update you. So from here, I don't know that we can get another one in there. So here's where we're gonna hit it with a knot. Let's see, make sure I'm doing this right here. So over. Square that knot up. That rolled our paracord just a little bit, but we shall survive. So make sure your knot is nice and tight, and then what we're gonna do is take that excess paracord. If y'all can see here, let me try and do it from the bottom so y'all can see what I'm doing here. We're gonna feed that paracord through, and we may need to give it a little assistance. So we'll feed it through, try not to stab ourselves. Okay, so that's been knotted. We're gonna pull that piece through there. We're gonna pull this piece through here. And then we're going to knot it again. And then it is your choice from there. If you, I should have put a square knot in the other one. I did not put a square knot in that first one, and I absolutely should have, but make sure you're tight. And then I would cut that off and burn it. Or if you really want, you can run this back through here one more time. You run it through, you could not run it through. That's totally up to you. Now I think most would probably leave some kind of little lanyard on here. I'm not really a lanyard kind of guy, so your mileage may vary. If you wanted a lanyard, you could tie this off, however long you feel is necessary. That's pretty little long for a wrist strap. Let's say you wanted something like that. Probably not the prettiest wrap, but that's way more functional in the hand. Now what I'm gonna do is likely cut this right here and melt it into itself. But until I decide if I'm gonna rewrap this or not, I'm not gonna cut this and waste this piece of paracord. So I'm gonna eat some food, mull over this for 10-15 minutes and decide if I want to rewrap this or not. But essentially, I would cut this here, melt it, push it into itself, and now you've got a finished nail.